You know, there are countless stories of humans doing amazing things in emergencies or in times of great difficulty. And yet we all know that there is a kind of potential inside us that we can connect to if we had to. But yet most of us don't make a practice of thinking about connecting to that potential all the time. Or at least even communicating with our inner mind. Our inner mind runs everything. Our conscious mind can focus on about 7 things at any one moment, whereas our unconscious is processing million bits of information all the time. And our unconscious filters our reality for us. And so our picture of the world is determined by a number of conditioning factors. Understanding how your mind is communicating to you and how you can communicate to your inner mind is a really vital part of enriching who you are and how you live and how you experience it. So this is just a brief chance for me to talk a little bit about how that works, and then that should hopefully generate some questions, and then I can hopefully answer your questions. And I know some of you will have lots of experience and understanding of hypnosis, others of you might not have any and you may be very skeptical. Hypnosis is something that I think is massively misunderstood. The hypnotic trance state is something that is very natural, very normal, and it's something we go into every day. When we wake up in the morning and we're naturally groggy, we're highly suggestible. So if you wanted your partner to kind of get you a cup of tea, that would be the time to be trying to get them to follow some good ideas. Last thing at night, just before we go to sleep, the state before we drop off to sleep is a naturally hypnotic state, which is why it's so important to use those final moments at the end of the day to think positively, to be gentle with yourself, to review your day effectively, and to plan your next day, to see things going well. Understanding the rhythms of our inner mind is a vital part of being able to enjoy your life more. And for me, hypnosis is just an effective bridge between those two worlds, between the conscious and the unconscious. And so where it gets really interesting is when you're looking at using hypnosis to accelerate a richer understanding of who you are, so in therapy or personal or spiritual development. That's why I think it gets really exciting. For me, those whole worlds can be defined as being making that which was previously unconscious, conscious. That's really the purpose of all those practices, I believe, because then we have more choice over who we are and how we behave in different situations. And that gives us freedom. That gives us the power to create behavior change, to engage with ourselves differently, and to engage with other people differently. And that is, I think, yeah, that's a great tool for freedom. But just to give you kind of one example of what I'm talking about, whilst I've been talking, there's been information coming to your brain that hasn't been relevant to this conversation. And so you haven't been noticing it probably. Like, we're experiencing millions of bits of information, but we're not consciously noticing it. So I'll draw your attention to that now, and that's the feeling of your feet in your shoes. Now that I've done that, you can feel your feet in your shoes, right? That information has been coming to your brain the whole time I've been talking, but it hasn't been relevant to you, so you haven't noticed. So what if hypnosis was a way of drawing your attention to previously unrecognized potentials? The data of which is there, the skills of which are available to you, but you're just not consciously spending time feeling connected to that ability. And how much also of our way or our beliefs about who we are affected by things that were outside of our control. The parenting we receive, the education that we receive. There was an experiment done at the end of the 60s by 2 psychologists who were doing the research on a group of kids that were young. They were about 12. And in those days, a lot of those lessons were led by one teacher. And they assessed the children for their intelligence and their scholastic ability and their grades and their memory and all sorts of factors that would impact on how good they were at school. And then they pulled the teacher to one side and they pointed out 3 kids, not in a way where the kids could know, but they singled out 3 children and informed the teacher that those children were bright, gifted, and were going to go a long way, according to the psychology assessment. But in truth, those children were selected out of the average section of the class. There was nothing particularly brilliant about them. But at the end of the year, those kids had done better. They'd improved more than the other children. Yet that teacher was aware that he was being studied, and he was purposefully not trying to praise them more or support them more. But what the study showed is, say, let's say one of those kids was called Johnny, and Johnny ran into a problem, let's say a maths problem, and he put his hand up. Everything from how that teacher walked towards Johnny said, you're gifted, you're bright, you're going to go a long way. And what they came up with is this concept of implied expectation, that the implied expectation of the teacher had a massive impact on their confidence. That makes sense, right? That would make sense to me. You don't even need to do the experiment to know that that would be logical, right? And that's really important to know if you're a teacher. It's really important to know if you're a manager of other humans. It's really important if you're a parent to understand that principle. But what are you like in your own mind when you run into a problem? If you run into a challenge, do you immediately move towards yourself with the belief that you're gifted, that you're intelligent, that you're going to go a long way? Do you have that embedded certainty? Because it's obvious to us within a classroom that that would make a big difference at the end of the year. And of course that's completely true of individuals in their relationship to themselves. And so hypnosis is just one of those tools that you can use to work on that conditioning, to work on that belief. And to look at your language patterns, which is where all of our beliefs are held. And to start looking at where we're limiting ourselves, where we're controlled by others, where we're being influenced by advertisers, and how we can start to take control of our conditioning on a daily basis to program ourselves in new and interesting ways. And essentially that is the whole arena of hypnosis. How it works, a lot of the time, I don't know if any of you here have been hypnotized, but just before hypnotizing someone, you have to prepare them hugely for the experience, because otherwise they're going to be massively disappointed. Based from what they've seen on TV or in films, they're expecting something quite magical, you know? They're expecting to be completely out cold, to have no memory, their mind is going to be completely wiped, and they're going to be uploaded with a new character. Or manipulated, or clucking like a chicken, or eating lemons, thinking they're apples, and the stage show hypnosis stuff works on some very different principles. It works on giving people an opportunity to be extroverted and to give them an opportunity to entertain a bunch of people. And it implies the hypnotherapist has got control, but actually all hypnosis does is it gives people permission to be who they truly are and who they truly like to be. If I'm hypnotizing a client and I start using language they don't like, or I start getting them to try and do something which goes against their values, they'll just come round. They'll just stop being in rapport. They just wait, you know, it just doesn't work. The skill of a hypnotist is being able to match someone's beliefs, their language patterns, their value system, and to understand who that person really is and to invite that out and to give someone permission to be who they truly are. And that's why it's such a beautiful tool for freedom and potential. And I really believe these skills and this understanding should be taught in schools. Because actually when you're being hypnotized, yes, with practice the body can feel very heavy and relaxed. And it can almost feel as though our mind is kind of floating in a field of awareness above the body. You can have quite profound physical sensations, sometimes feeling completely numb. But very commonly you just feel relaxed in the same way that you would feel present and peaceful when meditating. And one of my teachers, a brilliant man called Stephen Walensky, who wrote a brilliant book called The Trances We Live. And he truly believed that hypnosis and meditation and all the supposed trance practices were actually about realizing that every day we walk around in a trance. We walk around in our conditioned state of being. We're a mother, we're a daughter, we're a husband, we're a manager or a worker bee, or we have these ideas, and those are trances. And actually having a practice of transcendence in our life, transcendent, ending the trance of our conditioning, that's the key. And actually when you're hypnotized or you're meditating, the idea being is you can literally come out of all of those patterns and objectively assess, who am I? Why am I responding in those situations in that way? Where does this come from? Why am I going to allow a disgruntled, like, 5-year-old inside me that's still upset about not getting that attention determine how I respond in my romantic relationships? And so it's about really developing that internal objectivity around the past conditioning and our present day conditioning that we're doing to ourselves and that we're being exposed to, and also moving beyond the idea of the personal limitation. So for me, hypnosis comes into three main categories, and this is what I go into in the book, What is Hypnosis? There's the whole process around deprogramming. So letting go of the limiting beliefs, feeling, resentments, resistances of life, and getting to a place of peace. Letting go of the idea that there's anything wrong, which is a big piece. You know, the process of going from 0 to adult as a human involves a lot of experiences that we commonly resist. And those resistances and resentments and frustrations and disappointments and heartbreaks just end up clouding our natural ability to be happy. So the kind of pillar one of happiness, which is accelerated with hypnosis, is really about deprogramming all of those things. Yeah. Okay. And so pillar two is programming. It's realizing that, yes, we can let go of our old conditioning, but every day we're conditioning ourselves with our beliefs, with the thoughts that we have, with the language patterns that we use, and our expectations. What we're seeing, what we're imagining, the quality of our feelings in our body when we're thinking about our next exam or our next interview or our next date. Those completely become potentially limiting or liberating conditioning tools. And we have apparently on average 60,000 thoughts a day. And 95% of those thoughts are the same thoughts that we had the day before. So we repeat and we repeat and we repeat these ideas of ourselves to ourselves, and it holds in place who we are. And then the third pillar is about reconnection. And for me, that's about understanding that our idea of ourselves as a small, limited, separate personality is a huge part of what makes us unhappy. And so transcendence or reconnection practices are about experiencing your field of awareness or your field of consciousness beyond your idea of who you are in a limited body with a certain name and a certain age and even a certain gender. And there are ways in which you can use hypnosis to have these transcendent experiences to be as identified with others or the forests or the oceans or the singular field of consciousness. And in my experience, those three areas are vital. They work together. So the first pillar gives you peace. The second pillar gives you power. It's understanding how to bring out your best performance. And the third pillar is about what connects you to a greater meaning and purpose in life and enables you to feel more connected to yourself and others in more loving and unconditionally accepting ways. So for me, that's really the heart of the spiritual stuff. And the mind stuff is pillar two is really about, the practices we can have to be powerful. And then the deprogramming stuff is to let go of all of those feelings of inadequacy and resentment and resistance. And in each of those areas, which a lot of spiritual schools just focus on one or the other, but all of those areas can be accelerated with hypnosis techniques. And that's what I cover in the book, and that's what I'm passionate about sharing. And most importantly, passionate about sharing is self-hypnosis. That all of these techniques can be done by yourself. Yes, it's lovely to work with a hypnotherapist. That's brilliant. I love, if people can afford to see me and they can afford the time, then it's wonderful to be able to kind of be there in support of people freeing themselves. It's beautiful. But I'm more excited about everybody learning these tools so they can just do it themselves. And I really believe there isn't anything that you can't do with a courageous heart and a willingness to leave no stone unturned. And using these techniques, you can find all of the causes of all of your difficulties. You can dissolve all of the negative conditioning. You can recondition who you are, and you can develop practices of transcendence so you feel as connected to everyone as you could ever hope to be. And that to me is the pure heart of what hypnosis is all about. Really deep state, really deep state. Delta's deep sleep, right? And then there's theta, which is very, very powerful. And it's very powerful for accessing memory, very powerful for feeling more peaceful, being more objective about emotion. So it's really good state to get into to do the deeper therapy on yourself and to do with clients. However, where a lot of hypnosis done is in the alpha state, which is before theta, which is just the kind of the mildly hypnotized and focused. And so you will use both states. And some people access one really easily but not the other, and so you can do work in either. But it's in those two areas, the alpha and the theta.
Thank you. And are you familiar with the practice of shamanic journaling?
Yeah.
So is it similar? Because I've had a mixture of experiences. I've done a lot of shamanic work, and I've had a mixture of states. I've reached a mixture of different states. So it strikes me that there's a similarity there, and that you could probably do quite similar work.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, you could look at some of the visualizations that hypnotists use, and some of the inner child work, and connecting to your wise person, connecting to your animal totem, and they're all drawing on these ancient traditions and these old practices. When I first discovered hypnosis, I was like, well, this is the meeting ground of ancient practices of transcendence. And you can be led on shamanic journeys, or you can run your own on yourself. And for me, yeah, when you're doing a shamanic journey yourself, you're doing, in my world, self-hypnosis. So how I got into hypnosis, there's two parts to it. The main reason was I was brought up by a very logical, scientific man. He was a doctor, a surgeon, and of all the doctors, they're like the most mechanically minded. And he brought me up to be passionately atheistic, not marginally agnostic, passionately atheistic. And inconveniently, I had a big spiritual awakening when I was 27. It was not what I was expecting. I wasn't a spiritual seeker, and it was just one vast epiphany which completely changed my life. And in simple terms, I got to experience myself without fear, and I was flooded with happiness and love. Or rather, what I experienced was an upswelling from within of happiness and love that seemed to be who I naturally was once the fear was gone. And I wasn't an anxious or particularly scared person, but I was just so identified with my ego state, which is built on fear. And so I had a moment of freedom from that, and I became obsessed with two things. One, what real happiness is and what gets in the way of it, and two, epiphanies, because I could see how my epiphany had happened. There were ingredients, there were things people had said, there was something I read in a book, there was one exchange I had with an Indian holy man who didn't even say a word, and all those things happened to make it possible for me to have an epiphany. So when I tried to start looking into where epiphanies come from, I saw all of these practices of transcendence in all the cultures. Spinning like a whirling dervish, tribal dancing, tribal drumming, taking plant medicines, LSD, you know, meditation, prayer, all of these seem to be about transcendence. And so I was aware of this experience I'd had some years ago when someone lent me a hypnosis tape, and I was so skeptical that I could be hypnotized or it would be any good, and I was like this, lying in bed, rolling my eyes at it, because I hated religion and spirituality. I hated personal development. I thought it was all tosh and nonsense, and I was so cynical. And I kept listening to this tape, and I hated the music, and I hated his voice, and the whole thing was cheesy. There were panpipes happening. It was bad, you know. And the voice on the tape invited me to think of a time in my past when I could have used more support. And I was like, oh, this is so cheesy. And but sure enough, this memory popped up. And I remember being a bit disappointed. I remember thinking, really? That memory? I was 7, I was just being pathetic, a bit needy. I was just a stupid little detail. I wanted something a bit more meaty if I was going to do this. And I was still really resistant. Anyway, they asked me to imagine creating this scene on a screen in my mind, like a cinema screen. And then invited me to step in. And I was still rolling my eyes at the whole idea of all of it. But as soon as I stepped into that memory, my whole system changed. And all my cynicism disappeared, because as I stepped into that scene, a tear sprinted out of my head. It didn't just kind of roll out. It was like it had been in there for years. And I was silenced, and I realized that everything I'd said about that memory was what I said then. It was a small detail. My father had ignored me when I tried to engage with him. But it was indicative of the way he was at certain times, which was actually really damaging for me. Yet at the time, I told myself I was being stupid, I was pathetic. It was just that I ran myself down. So as soon as I'd entered that memory, I realized that that wasn't right. And that I was okay, and that wasn't appropriate. And I had I shed a couple more tears. I felt a bit cleansed. And the next day, I felt, I don't know, 2%, 3% better about my whole self. And I'd spent 10 minutes doing some self-hypnosis, or while I was being led by a tape. And that stayed with me. I didn't pursue it any further. But it was later, after my epiphany, that I remembered this power of hypnosis and those two things combined. And a leaflet to study hypnosis came through my door, which I'd never seen before, and it just all seemed a bit too magical to ignore. But the thing I'll say is, when I went to, in my studying about where happiness comes from, I realized that a lot of our society is set up in such a way that it doesn't make us happy. And yet, traditional psychiatry, a lot of it, not all of it, and traditional hypnosis, a lot of it, not all of it, is kind of built on this old Victorian idea that our job as therapists is to glue people back together and get them back out there on the treadmill of life, because that's good, and if you can't handle it, there's something wrong with you. But I decided, actually, well, if I could start using these techniques to look at more natural forms of organic happiness that comes from freedom, and I could combine that with hypnosis, which is a transcendent tool, would that work better? And so I went into practice as a hypnotist just to try and as an experiment, really. And my practice took off because I think there's a real shortage of that. We'll always come out of a trance. That's never dangerous. What is dangerous is you're softening your filters that might protect you from whatever's happening on the screen. So it depends what you're watching. I would be careful as to what imagery you're allowing to be imprinted on your brain in that way. So I'd make sure that you were kind of watching films that you know don't have content in which could be traumatizing in any way.
Yes.
That's the only, I think that's fine. That would be fine. The question was, does hypnosis, does a treatment only work for 5 days or so? There are certain hypnotic treatments that I believe don't stick. Yeah, so for instance, if you came to see me to stop smoking and I got you to think that smoking was associated with something revolting, it's what's called aversion therapy. So in your mind, I'd ask you what really revolts you. You know, what really, as a substance, what would really revolt you? And in your mind, I could make a connection between cigarettes and that. If I did that, then that's unlikely to last in terms of stopping you from smoking. That kind of hypnosis won't stick, yeah? However, there's certain kind of hypnosis around certain behaviors where when you truly understand why a part of you has been doing something, when it understands that no longer serves, sometimes you can take a condition that has been lifelong and resolve it in one session and it never goes back. You know? And the interesting thing is, it's not like that for everyone. And there are some people where I've had a client and we've taken care of a number of things. They came to see me because they had fear of exams. Sorted. One session, their next exam, they felt much more grounded. They were learning to drive and they were very, very nervous. Help them with hypnobirthing, that's all fine. But then one thing just doesn't work at all. You know? So there are some people that will respond really well to hypnosis and they'll get some great results in a number of areas, but they won't get results in every area. But no, hypnosis in a sense can create lifelong cure. In terms of the one thing that's great about hypnosis is if it's going to work, you know very quickly. You know within a few sessions. It doesn't mean the situation is resolved, but you should be moving in the right direction. And you should intuitively feel it's helping, right? One of the biggest challenges with most therapies actually is, and this is true of hypnosis too, is that if you're not careful, you end up just pushing symptoms around. Sometimes, when I was first trained, if someone comes to me with insomnia, here's a script to help people sleep. And so I'd get them hypnotized, and then I'd read them this script that was kind of like you're feeling your ability to sleep is improving each and every day. You imagine yourself going to sleep at night and you feel able to drop off to sleep naturally. And it's a direct suggestion script, which for a small percentage of people would work a treat. Most people aren't sleeping brilliantly well because they're not switching off their mind. The reason why they're not switching off their mind is because they're either throughout the day using their mind too much and they're not connected enough to their body or their heart, or they have things that they're anxious about that they haven't resolved, either in their present or in their past. So helping someone sleep in that situation is not what's being called for. What's being called for is something a little deeper. And so that's one of the challenges that I now spend a lot more time before doing hypnosis, working out what's the actual problem underneath. And I find if you get that right, then not only will they start sleeping better, but a bunch of other habits will also improve without even needing to talk about them. Does that make sense? And that's really true of insomnia. Really true of insomnia. There's usually much, much deeper things. And they do intersect, you know, and when you're being mindful, you're super present. and at the same time you're objective about the movements of the mind. And that's in many ways exactly what's happening when you're in hypnosis. Mindfulness would be about, without an agenda, noticing, with the wider agenda of generally being more peaceful, right, and more balanced. Whereas within hypnosis, in principle, you're usually accessing that state to then do some work, either deprogramming, reprogramming, or reconnection. Yeah? Equal parts negotiation. And so if someone is not sleeping well, or they're smoking, or they're feeling anxious in certain situations, then using visualization and a hypnotic state, you then go and find that part that's responsible for that behavior. You visualize it, it talks back, you talk to it, it will often tell you what it needs to be different. You make a new deal with it. I remember working with someone, they presented, they'd been speaking publicly for years, they were very successful, they often spoke to large conferences, they'd not been nervous about speaking in public for years, and they had become nervous, which is quite rare. And he'd been working basically 16-hour days, 6 days a week, and his body was just, it's too much. And so when we did the work, we found out his system was like, you're working too hard. So we brokered a deal where he would work like 12 hours a day, 4 days a week, and then 8 hours the next day, and he wouldn't work at the weekends. And he sent me a text the next Wednesday, absolutely phenomenal. I did a presentation, the deals worked, it's wonderful, my nerves were completely gone, I've got more life balance, I don't know how I'm going to quite fit my work in, but thank you. And 8 months later, I had a call from him saying, I'm feeling nervous again before speaking. I said, how much are you working? And it was, he'd broken the agreement and the nerves came back. And it's quite amazing how you can literally negotiate with different parts, and they will sometimes literally verbally tell you what they need to be different in order for behavior to change. And if you get that deal right, in answer to your question, visualization, there's a few ways. Essentially, if a person has confirmed that they have a visual for that character, right, which is surprising, you know, but you can, you know, and this can sometimes be inner child work, or, you know, what's interesting is people generally do get an image for themselves. If you imagine they're sitting down there, the route you have to take is, first of all, you have to thank the part for the behavior that you previously resisted. The most common reason why people can't change their behavior is they're in resistance to the experience. That behavior, even though it's problematic, most commonly is happening as an attempt from a part of you to help you. And so if you go in there and give it a telling off, then it's not involved, it won't help you. But if you go in and say, in principle, thank you so much for the nerves before I present, I know you're trying to communicate to me, and I'm here to talk. How can I help? And it's like, you're working too hard, you know? And it's like, okay. And it literally, some people, they will hear words coming up from themselves, and then I'm facilitating it, but you can do this work on yourself, you know, and you'll say, okay, so what do you need to be different? How can I do something different? And you wait until that part says, okay, you know. My favorite way of doing it now is using music. So I set the scene for the negotiation, and then I tell them I'm going to play an amazing piece of music, and that becomes the soundtrack to the conversation. And so some people will visualize a conversation where they hear it, or other times people go, oh, he's talking to my father, and he became a blue crystal in my hand, and then I put him in my heart, and I exploded with love, and then we danced around a field. And I'm like, wow. You know, I just put on one piece of music with an intention, and then they're unconscious. It's like inducing a waking dream state. And it's not, it sounds weirder than it is. You know, if you think to yourself, what am I going to have for supper tonight? Yeah? And you have a part of negotiation. You find the part that wants to eat, and you say to it, what do you think? Do we want Thai tonight, or do we want Vietnamese? And you wait until the part of you goes, we want this. And you're like, cool, deal. You do it all the time. But you can actually, you can do it with visualization. You're pointing out something that's really powerful. When you're in that suggestible state, the programming comes in a number of forms. What you visualize, what your expectations and your beliefs, the feelings you generate in your system, and the words you use. And when you get that right, I mean, when I'm working with clients, you know, I use music. So we've just taken them down, we've renegotiated a deal with their unconscious, we've dropped this limiting identity, and then I'm getting them to see themselves presenting with more power, or being a more effective parent, or being a better boss, or running faster, and I love it when you've really overcome something challenging, and then I'm playing amazingly powerful, uplifting music. I'm getting them to visualize everyone praising them for how amazing they are, and I'm getting them to repeat to themselves empowering statements, you know, and they're often in floods of tears, you know, of joy. And it's, you know, that state is different for everybody. It's different for everybody, but the light alpha state, you feel still, you feel very relaxed, you feel very present, and the mind feels focused. It's not chittery chattering off too much. It will still a bit. You'll have an inner cynic and things like that. But generally you feel still and focused, very present. You feel quite powerful, peaceful. But the theta state is more profound. The body often feels totally, not paralyzed, but thick set, you know, like it's dissolved away. You know, and the mind is like spacious. There's no thought between thoughts, you know, and the whole thing is very different. And so yeah, you just can get into that feeling. And really, it becomes less relevant, the states you're in. Really, it's about generating positive feeling, dissolving away negative feeling and getting into state. All of this is about state management. You know, how we perform and how people relate to us is really about the state that we're in. And so you use the hypnotic trance to balance that and set you up for a good day.
And this theta, like, this is the ultimate, is it, in terms of trance?
It's very powerful for memory recall. It's very powerful for emotional objectivity. Therefore, it's the most powerful for doing transformational work.
And are there other, like, significations? You mentioned alpha. And other different...
Well, our normal waking reality, you know, and there is a different, and then there's delta, which is deep sleep and so on. But in terms of trance, it's alpha and theta. Yeah. And I'm sure people have got theories about different layers and levels within those. But
yeah.
For me, those aren't especially relevant. But it's just once you know when you're connecting, when that bridge between conscious and unconscious is open, you know. Yeah, it is, and so on. What's contraindicated is dissociative personality disorders, right? So people who are struggling with psychosis, psychopathy, sociopathy, you know, schizophrenia, you wouldn't want most hypnotherapists doing work in that way. And people with bipolar, pronounced depression and really prohibitive anxiety. However, if you're an advanced hypnotist, you can do amazing work with depression, anxiety and bipolar. The standard medical profession believes that bipolar is contraindicated for hypnosis, and I think therefore anyone attempting to treat it with hypnosis should proceed with great caution. But I've got some amazing results in that area. Amazing results where people are not on medication. They've been told they're going to be on medication for the rest of their lives. But you know, people making decisions about their medication should be done with the very close support of someone that knows what they're doing. Hi, my name's Tom Fortismere. I'm the author of What is Hypnosis. I'm in the Watkins bookstore. I wanted to take this moment just to explain this little book debunks the myths. Hypnosis has got a terrible reputation and it's unfair. I think hypnosis is one of the most powerful tools for personal, spiritual and social transformation. And this book in a Q&A format explains how it works, what it is, what it isn't, strips away all that kind of strange mythology and makes it plain and simple what a beautiful tool it is for changing your life. I hope you enjoy it.